I'm Louisa, founder of 𝒕𝒊�𝒔𝒂𝒈𝒆 a web mag and a safe space community dedicated to the world of mixed people of any combination, a community that helps you build your confidence, make friends, and create a positive impact in the world. Today, I have a stunning guest. She's so cool, let me say that. So let's welcome and hand over the mic to SOPHIE SANDHIYA, a mixed Italian, British, and French lawyer and human rights advocate who promotes and safeguards mixed heritage rights. Hi, SOPHIE, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hi, Louisa. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really honored to speak with you and to speak with everybody else that's interested in mixed heritage people or that's mixed as well. As you said, my mother is Indian, Gujarati, and my dad is British, but also has French ancestry. Hence, my surname is a French one. So that's me. And as you said, I have a day job, which is a media lawyer, but really what my passion has been is as a lawyer looking at how laws and international human rights laws might affect people that are mixed heritage. And as part of my master's dissertation, I did a whole load of research on this about 2 years ago. So I've just been trying to continue that and inform people about what my research uncovered and speak with wonderful people like you and wonderful people around the world. Yeah.
It's an honor for me too. Let me just say that straight. So I'm really happy to have you here with us today. And I would like you just to give us a glimpse of your background, or your story, and the environment you grew up.
Great. So currently I'm based in London in the United Kingdom, but I was born in the Wirral, which is near Liverpool, famous for the Beatles. So that was where my mum emigrated to from India. So my mum is Indian, Gujarati Indian, but she was actually born in Tanzania. So maybe a lot of you might know that a lot of Indians have East African heritage.
Yeah.
So she was actually born in Tanzania and she lived there for 6 years. And then she moved to India and lived in Gujarat for 10 years. She then moved to United Kingdom when she was just 16 years old. She met my dad when she was 18, got married, and hence there's me. And my dad was born and bred in the UK, but has a lot of French heritage. So that's my background. What happened, as happens, life happens sometimes. My parents divorced when I was very young. So when I was about 2 years old, I therefore just lived with my mum. So even though I'm mixed heritage and I'm always very proud of my heritage and my roots, I haven't grown up with two cultures. I've very much grown up with Indian culture and Indian heritage. Now, because I'm obviously born in the UK and I'm culturally very British, I can tell you when I go to other countries, I can see the British parts of me and I can definitely see the Indian parts of me. So yes, obviously culturally I'm born and brought up in the UK, but in terms of growing up, the influence at home, my food, my language, music, very, very Indian.
So do you define yourself exactly how? How do you define your racial identity? And by the way, what does this mean to you?
Yeah, I always say when people ask me where I'm from, and I think you will appreciate this, that sometimes when people see you, some people can get offended by it. I always go by intention. I always think, what's the intention? But when people ask me where I'm from, I will always tell people I'm mixed. I will always say I'm mixed. The reason I say that is because I've often come across a lot of prejudice around being mixed. I think there's always a taboo about being mixed. And I don't think there should be that prejudice at all. So I'm always saying I'm mixed, and I always tell people, also because it's factually true. But the problem I've sometimes had is two things. Firstly, I grew up in the early 80s, and when people would have forms to fill in, they didn't have, a lot of them didn't have mixed. And so when that happened, I was in a bit of a dilemma because culturally I feel Indian. So if I saw an Indian box, I would tick Indian.
Yeah.
Because that was how I felt. So I would always tick Indian. But I also know that a lot of people would look at me and think, you're European, you're white, you know?
Yeah.
So I was always caught in this kind of thing. What do I do? So my answer really now is I always say I'm mixed. And if people want to delve further, they'll understand that mixed means lots of different things, right?
Exactly. So for you particularly, what does it mean for you?
For me particularly, to be mixed,
It's to be
or
mixedness and mixed.
yeah. For me, I think it just means choosing your combination, choosing your way of expressing your identity. And I think you don't have to be mixed to be that. We all
Beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
right?
I think that is a stage we must arrive one day, but I believe we still have problem to understand what really mixed means. So I don't know, I'm convinced we have to pass through the definition of mixed if we can define it, because you know how you said there is nothing to define, but as human beings, we always need, you know, to put things straight in a, I don't like the word, but in a box, like let us say,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
But we need to go through that to understand that at the end, we are human beings. We are, you know, the inside
Right.
is the same for everybody. The outside has its own variety. So I do agree with you on this.
Yes. Yeah. And I agree. I think this is, again, part of the paradox, right? We're all wanting to define people, whether that's by their race, their ethnicity. You know, I remember in school, people would say, what music do you like? And if I say I like all music, they say, no, which are you, a pop girl? Are you an R&B girl? Are you this girl? You know, be like, no, I like lots of different things. We love pinning people down, but we ourselves also don't like to be categorized. We don't like to feel like we're being pigeonholed, you know.
Exactly.
But I think it's also very different. I hesitate to be put in boxes and to be defined with the mix, because I if we look in America, you know, where people were, if you have one, what are the 10th or 60th or whatever, then you're automatically black. The one drop rule, as they say. This comes from, in my view, and obviously I don't have black heritage, so I'm speaking just a little bit as an outsider perspective. But if I'm bringing my own heritage into it, some of that I think comes just a lot from prejudice and fear, and I don't think we should be defining people in that way, unless it's going to come from a place of pride. And I don't think you can, you know, what does it mean? I mean, if I go to other people that are quote unquote both Indian, not mixed, if you look at how they relate and how they express themselves, it won't be very different maybe to me.
Yeah.
So then what does mix mean? You know, they won't, and I find people say this to me. They're like, oh, but you just have the same upbringing we have, you know, you have the same. Yes. So for British Indians that live here, it's exactly the same. So then what does mixed mean? In fact, mixed doesn't really have a meaning, not culturally anyway.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think biologically, I'm always very uncomfortable with this idea of boxing people up in identities. I think it's very uncomfortable. I think that's where we've ended up with a lot of the problems.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I would have said in this moment, me too, but let us leave it. It's another
I'd love
story.
to hear that.
It's
Part
another
two,
story.
please. Part two.
So, now, how have you connected to all of your cultures over time? And are there circumstances in which you change how you identify racially? I just brought up this question because in one of your posts on your Instagram, you were
Mhm.
pointing out the um, Trump,
Oh,
President
yeah.
Trump, questioning Kamala Harris on her racial identity. And you were talking about the fact that he was asking whether she was Indian or whether she was Black. So this we know is a form of emotional abuse, so-called gaslighting, right? In which
Mhm.
one person tries to control the other by causing them to doubt and question themselves with the consequences of, moreover, mental health impact, which
Mhm.
includes, feelings of powerless, fearless, confusion, all those type of feelings that make you feel down, disorientated, and
Yes.
have a low self-esteem. So, what do you think about this, and what is your position toward this form of psychological abuse, or let us say better, manipulation?
I think it's a very common tactic that is used to almost treat particularly mixed heritage people with distrust, you know, and I think it's very damaging, which is why I felt so passionate about it. Also because I saw people, even people that I know, were passing around a meme. This, I don't know if you remember, it's Kamala Chameleon.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had actually somebody that I know that was passing around that meme, and I thought this is incredibly damaging because it portrays mixedness as this kind of untrustworthy identity. You know, they can be anything and look like anything, therefore we need to mistrust them. You can't trust them. That this is where I feel it comes from.
Yeah.
So that's I felt strongly about it. And I think I understand that as for a lot of people who are mixed heritage, there is a sense. I mean, I have this myself. There are lots of places I go to where I can fit in. You know, I actually come Italy. When I went to Italy, people think I'm Italian. I went to Mexico a few months ago, and I do actually speak Spanish. You know, maybe not brilliantly, but I do speak Spanish. But so you know, people think you're there. If I certain parts of India I go to, particularly if I'm in North India and Punjab, people do think I look Punjabi. So there is this sense that I understand that as mixed heritage people, many of us can go to lots of different places and can fit in. I'm sure you've had this experience as well, you know. But I don't play on it. I'm always very open about where I'm from. So if somebody says to me, "Oh, are you Turkish? You look Turkish," I will always say, "Oh, no, no, I'm not. I am, you know, Indian and British and French." Always have been very open about what my identity is. So there is no misleadingness. There is no me trying to be something that I'm not. And I think historically it comes a lot from the notion of passing, right? This idea that people have in history for their own protection or whatever pretended to be often, you know, white and hid their other kind of racial backgrounds, or whatever. And I think there are a lot of stories about people passing. But what I say is that even if you think I'm somebody different or from a different kind of heritage, that's your perception. That's not me passing. That's your perception
Yeah.
of what certain races and certain identities look like. And that's another problem, another misconception as well, is that we've got a rigid idea, right? Black, brown, white. There's lots of different movement features, skin colors
Yeah.
across all of those, so that's why I felt very strongly about it. It's always done to portray this misleading, almost untrustworthy nature of mixed heritage people, which I really find unfair.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, parents to have a great role in making us um elaborating all these type of thoughts, you know.
Yeah.
So in your specific situation, in your specific experience, what were your parents' attitudes towards race and diverse culture, let us say, while you were growing up?
So because I only grew up with my mum, I didn't really get to have these conversations with my dad.
Okay.
But I think with my mum, it was her attitudes were embedded and informed by being an immigrant in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think in the 70s, which is when my mum, first arrived into the UK, a lot of the emphasis for those generations that came from the Caribbean and from India was you have to basically conform and assimilate,
Yeah.
which she did very well. Like she was she's I still say this to my mom now, but she was very Indian. So my home very Indian, everything very Indian. But when we would go out, she learnt to speak English very quickly. She knew how to adapt. So I think I got this sense of you can be both. And I'm outside.
It's
I am
fantastic.
British. I went to a convent school actually. This is quite interesting. So I did get baptized because my dad wanted me to be baptized. So I was going to school and I was in a very Catholic environment. And I love that actually because I still love religions. I love learning about all religions. So I would be at school, I would do all those things, do Christmas, do all, Easter-ish stories, everything. And then I would go home and I would be doing my prayers in the temple, in our little Hindu temple. So this was a very normal thing for me. And because I saw my mom, my mom was very comfortable. She'd be in Indian clothes, she'd be herself, she'd be in Western clothes, she'd be herself. So for me, this transience was very natural. It felt very
Yeah.
natural. And she had, in Liverpool, you didn't have, with the Wirral, you didn't have a very big Indian community. It's not like London. When I moved
Okay.
to London, it was like, oh my goodness, everyone's here, right? But in Liverpool, you saw another Indian person and you'd be like, oh my goodness, so a very small Indian community, so you had to adapt. You had to kind of be very comfortable with people who were not necessarily from where you were from, and my mum's has been very, very good at that.
I think it's one of the best skills we have, the one to adapt,
Yeah.
to every situation, to every some people talk about always this white privilege that,
Mhm.
it's let us say that there is also a mixed privilege. Say
Yes.
it
Yes.
positively, of
Absolutely.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway,
Absolutely.
we'll get into that too later.
Mhm.
I was still analyzing, your Instagram, and
Mm.
I saw many very interesting things there. Another thing was the one of Viktor Orban, the Hungarian far right prime minister. Um,
Yes.
and the fact that he sparks outrage with attack on race mixing in Europe. When he said that countries where races mingle, and I mean, the countries that where races mingle are no longer nations. Okay.
Mm.
So it's a very horrible thing to hear, I think.
Yeah.
I would like to know you personally what you think about this.
It's this fear mongering is the only thing I can say, and it's the lowest common denominator. And I think what I mean by that is, as humans, we have been and we are used to being in environments that you were talking about adapting before. We always adapt. You always adapt. And I think you reduce people to their sort of lowest, animal instinct when you say things like this.
Yeah.
And it's also the meaning of a nation. This becomes a powerful pull for people, right? If you talk about the nation is always monoracial. That's what I think. It's always monoracial. It's always a mono identity. And that somehow having different cultures, multiculturalism, having different religions, having different races somehow diminishes the purity of this one nation. And it's so simplistic, but it ends up being a very powerful animal instinct to people that people just latch onto. And again, that's not true. I mean, in the UK, for instance, this country, without having lots of different people, it doesn't have much of an identity. Its identity is in its multi kind of cultural, multi-faith, kind of identity. So this idea that other people, when they come in, they denounce the identity of a country. I feel it's too simplistic, and it's done out of fear mongering.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, by the way, I mean, integration, there's a lot of things. I mean, in Europe, there's a conversation about integration and whatever. Of course, when people come into the country, integration is a two-way process. So you have people coming in, they adapt, they learn languages, they integrate. But also the country itself has to change. It has to become like it has to change a little bit as well. Integration is a two-way process, and if we just had that attitude a little bit more, I think we wouldn't see so many of the problems that I think we're seeing, where we either put it on immigrants coming in or people of different nationalities coming in. We say it's your fault, you didn't adapt, you're the reason this country is changing. And we don't look at, well, what are you doing yourself to learn about other countries, to learn about other faiths? And if you have a strong identity, you have a strong nationality, it will hold. These things will still hold. But yeah, it was probably a very long jumbled answer to say, I just think it comes again from this fear baiting. And it's actually very terrifying when I see things like that.
Shocking. I would even,
Absolutely.
Then you stay there night, day, you think how a person may, have a great responsibility on guiding a nation. So okay, let us leave all the political circumstances, gaining, all those things that, okay, let us just leave aside that. But to have the courage to expose yourself in such thoughts and such considerations, I don't know, it's not a human way of being, let us say. No, you're right when you say it's extinct. Okay,
yes.
So that's maybe you can share with savage animals, let us say,
Absolutely. We are better than that. I always say to people, we are built of people. We send people to the moon. We do all these amazing inventions. But we can't somehow rid, and I see racism and prejudice of this. Yeah, we can't somehow rid people of this very animalistic, nonsensical, racism and prejudice. But we can apply our minds and do all these other things, but somehow we can't do that.
True. It's true. It's true. It's really true. Let's have a look to the various dilemmas of multiracial identity, especially for those with racially ambiguous appearance. Let us say the ones surrounding racially, interracially, multiracially linked circumstances. Now, I personally hate when they say, for instance, in my case, they usually say, you look so exotic, you're exotic, you are, I don't know, like a Macedonia, a fruit,
Yeah.
a
Yes.
mixture.
Or the, yeah.
It's like sometimes I feel compared to a pineapple or to papaya, hanging on a tree waiting for someone to pluck it.
Yes.
Very awkward. But anyway, what are the more annoying things that we multiracial identities usually annoy us more? What do you think?
So, so I definitely know it happens a little bit less now, but I resonate with what you said. This exotic. I used to get a lot of "What are you? What are you?" And it'd be like, I I think I'm human. I don't know what you are, but I think I'm human. So I definitely get this and this kind of exotic, almost, fetish. In fact, I'll be honest though, I only had this a few weeks ago, which really shocked me. I went into a coffee shop and I sometimes I wear a chain around me that has the Om, which is the Hindu symbol Om on me. And the guy that was serving me was Indian Gujarati background. And I think he saw and he knows me because I'm a fairly regular person there, and he said, I didn't, you're wearing that's the Hindu. I said, I
Yeah.
know, it's because I am Hindu. And he looked at me and was like, oh. And then he said to me, are you? And he said, oh, that's why you're. And then he started analyzing my features, then, which in a way I know it wasn't done with malice, but you get a lot of this analysis. I can see he's like, oh yes, I see this bit now, I see this bit, and then he says, oh, but you don't look it in it. So he went through this whole dialogue, and I'm just standing there. And then he said, I've never really spoken to a mixed person, like a
Oh.
mixed Indian person. And I thought, wow, this is a lot of weight and responsibility that I am the example. And I did say jokingly, I said, well, I hope I haven't put you off, but I mean, but that is indicative, I think, of a lot of reactions,
Yeah.
which is, and I think what can annoy me are just the assumptions. So people will often say, no, you don't look Indian. And actually I say, no, I'm mixed. And actually, unless you've seen every Indian person, because I can tell you when I go to India, there's people that have similarities to me. In my family, there are similarities to me. So I know where I get certain features from. So that's actually not true. But also, unless you've seen every kind of person of every race, it's very, you can't just tell people, but
Yeah.
you don't. You can say, oh, I didn't know that, or I wasn't sure where you came from. I absolutely have no problem with people saying that, because that's true. I don't always know where people come from and we shouldn't know just by looking at people,
Yeah.
like necessarily where they come from. So I think that can be difficult to deal with. Also, so I speak, and I have spoken about this before as well. Obviously growing up with my mum, she taught me Gujarati, and I went to Sunday school to speak my language. And often I get this from Indian people a lot, which is, oh, you speak it really well. I didn't know that you could speak Gujarati. And sometimes I'm thinking, but we all have the ability to speak languages. And of course, if I grow up with my mum, or I grow up in an Indian environment, why wouldn't I speak Gujarati?
Yeah.
Or why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I have this affection? I think my view is that this comes from a misperception people have that when
Yeah.
you marry someone who's a different faith or a different religion or a different ethnicity, that they're somehow not proud of where they come from and therefore wouldn't teach you, about your culture. And I've definitely had that a lot, that people seem surprised at how much I know, or how much about Indian culture I'm aware of. And sometimes I find that I can find that very annoying, because I think, I wouldn't go to somebody else and say, oh my goodness, you speak English so well, or how come you're wearing jeans today, or how come I don't do those sort of things. So
Yeah.
I can find it quite difficult when I'm asked almost, why do I know certain things, why do I know them so well?
But it's very important what you have said now, because it shows us that this type of attitude comes from both sides. Usually we always point out the whites because
Yeah,
they make some types of questions that has for us maybe has no sense, but
yeah,
but you see, you are showing us now that this comes from every side. So
absolutely.
it's
Yeah, it's not one. It's definitely not one-sided. And I think, sorry if I'm butting in, but you just made me think of something else that happens a lot of, which is on the look side, which is, and I do get this a lot because in Indian people, I think some of them will recognize straight away the Indian
yeah.
features. But
Yeah.
yeah, from a lot of the sort of white side, it's this categorization.
Yeah.
This is what Indian people look like. And what's really funny is I actually had an Indian person I know, and she was saying that somebody thought she was Portuguese.
Mm.
And when she revealed that she's Indian, and she's not mixed, both her parents are Indian. When she revealed she was Indian, this person who was white was like, "Oh, but you don't really look Indian. Indians normally look like this." And she was telling me, she was like, I was just like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to do a blood test? Do you want me to, what? But, and in a way, it's kind of hilarious. But in another way, it's again quite worrying because we all know in the times of apartheid and stuff, it was the state that would
Yeah.
tell you what we're going to tell you based on what we think what you are, and this is still there. And I think
Yeah.
this is what I find
Yeah.
kind of amusing sometimes, but also quite worrying, is
True.
that other people will determine who you are.
True. True. Right. This one too, I can say me too.
Yeah.
Although I always pass for Cuban or Brazilian and a Nigerian. When I say no, I'm Nigerian. Say no, you don't look like Nigerian.
You can't be. Yes.
How do Nigerians look? Because I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, and Nigeria again is it's a huge country, like with diversity within it. So
Yeah, yeah. I grew up even I grew up in the late in the 70s, let's say, and already
Mhm.
that time we had a lot of diversity in the country. So it's supposed to
Mhm.
be normal nowadays. Let us say just normal. But they still question me on that. No, you don't look like Nigerian at all. No, you are Brazilian. I say, okay, if you know that I'm Brazilian, okay, let's take it.
Today I'm Brazilian. Yeah. Tomorrow, who knows what I am? Yeah.
But I don't know how to dance salsa, because the next thing they will start with their stereotypes. Brazilians are very good in dancing some salsa, and Puerto Ricans are very nice in dancing other things. Africans can dance only drums. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. We are fantastic, really.
Agree.
So
Agree.
you said before that you have experienced a lot, I don't know whether a lot, but anyway, prejudices and racism. And I would like you to tell our followers here how usually you used to react. And I put inside this racism and prejudices, I also microaggressions, because they are also form of racism, right? So how usually do you react in front of these situations?
It's changed as I've got older, but when I was very young, and again, as I say, I did grow up in an environment which was predominantly very white until I was a teenager. So the racism and the prejudice I was suffering was usually from people who were white. So they would call me, and they'd see my mum, particularly if I was out with my mum, they'd call us both names. And I think at that time, it sounds kind of sad, but you were sort of used to it. So you ignored it. And I kind of ignored it. Also, I took my cue from my mum. So my mum would be like, just don't look up, just don't say anything. So just sort of move along. So I never really challenged it. I was also quite young, so I didn't challenge it. And I sort of expected it to a degree. When I moved to London, I was a teenager, and obviously as a teenager, it's already quite a difficult time. It was a different kind of prejudice, I would say. I won't use the term racism because I don't necessarily think it was racism, but I think that what I was then gone from a very non-Indian, very white community to quite an Indian community. And there I was experiencing prejudice from the Indian community. And that I have to tell you, maybe because I'm closer to the Indian community, but that really, really, really upset me. Because for me, yes, I'm fairer. I have a you know, a name which is quite universal. But in a lot of respects, I was living the same way that they were living, and I just didn't felt this separation, and I really found that hard to deal with. So I did begin, I think, to speak up a lot more as I started to get older. I started to tell people, you know, because if people would say things, particularly about being mixed, I did begin to challenge. And the way I began to challenge was, I mean, I tell this story to a few people, which is I was in a sort of friend setting, a party setting, and I was at a table and I was dressed in Indian clothes or whatever, but somebody just didn't think I was Indian, and they started to speak in Gujarati and made a joke kind of about me, not necessarily about my heritage, but they obviously didn't think I could speak Gujarati. And I answered back in Gujarati in a very kind of good way. And they were just shocked. And I realized the power of that. Actually, the power I had was to challenge their assumptions and to make them think twice. I used to do a lot of Indian dancing, because I did Indian dancing since I was 5. So I would do a lot of Bollywood dance, a lot of Bhangra dancing, Garba dancing. And I used to be one of the only mixed people, really, that were in those classes. And I remember a time when I think a very young girl came up and she said, "Ha ha ha, your dad's white," and then ran away. And I was just, I mean, you know, my dad wasn't actually anywhere near me, but I was just, because my dad hasn't ever come in contact with me. So I was a little bit like, okay, this is again a kind of pointing out, you're not really one of us, you know, you're different, you're not really Indian. And you know, just that separation. And it's come from an adult, it's not come from a child. That child is just repeating things that, you know, an adult probably has pointed out. And that really hurt me. So I used to, there are times when you can't really say anything, and there are times where I have a lot with publishing. So I began to do a lot of articles about my experience. So there is I think People in Harmony, I don't know if you've come across them, but I did start to write a lot about my experience. And that really has been a way of my, not so much challenge, but it's just been a way of expressing certain things. And I've had a lot of reactions. I mean, I've had a lot of people say, "I wish you'd said something," you know, or my way of challenging people, particularly in my community, has been to try and let them see things from a different perspective, you know, to speak back in Gujarati, or to sometimes say, "Oh, sorry, you know, what did you say?" and ask people to repeat things, like if they say certain things, to just kind of challenge some of their assumptions. And in a work context too, if I've had people making certain assumptions, I do my best to try and redress them. What I've learned is that there are a lot of that, mostly it comes from a place of people just not knowing. And if there is a way that you can nicely interact with people and challenge their assumptions, that's good. And there's always going to be a small minority of people who are just plain ignorant, then don't want to change. And to save my breath and to save my own mental health, sometimes I choose not to engage in them. Very, really, very, very long answer. I hope it gives you some kind of
Yeah, no, it's very important because, we discuss a lot of times about this, but each of us has a different point of view, a different way of thinking things. But at the end comes out that when you are in front of racism and prejudice, you always have one attitude, and it's the one of wanting respect for your
yes,
being a human being, first of all, and in any case, for let us call it difference, but I hate also to
yeah,
but
we're
just
all
to
different.
yeah, we are different, but people have to understand that being different is not something that bad. It's not something
Yes,
to push out from our
right.
normal being. So the standard dominated community can see other people different, but me too, I'm seeing them differently. So difference by difference just get us equal. So
Yes.
that's a simple.
Exactly. Everyone is different, whether mixed or not. Is another thing that I think. We all, take Nigerian. Have you ever met, people who that have both parents are Nigerian or one parent is Nigerian? They're not going to express being Nigerian in exactly the same way. Everybody is
Exactly.
going to take different things from it. There's not one
Exactly.
way. Same with being Indian, or same with being British. There is
Yeah.
not one way to be Indian. There are
Exactly.
many ways,
Exactly.
many ways.
Exactly. Exactly. You are more than right on this. And as we are always talking about negative things not being mixed, according to you, what are the benefits of being biracial, and what are the challenges? Let us think positively now.
Yeah, no, I think mostly it is positive. It's just the negative sometimes stick in our brain. But
Yeah.
look, I naturally am someone that has always loved learning about different people and different cultures as well as my own. And I think that just because of the nature of the fact that you're exposed to different cultures means that you do get, people say sometimes you get the best of both. And I think sometimes that is true. You do get the best of both. You do get exposure in a way that maybe you wouldn't have. I'm not saying you absolutely wouldn't, but I think there's more chance of you having this
Yeah.
exposure to lots of different cultures, lots of different foods, lots of different ways, just because you're already born in that environment and it feels comfortable. So I know that for me, and I don't know if it's how much is to do with being, biracial and how much is just your own personal things, but I know I travel a lot for work as well. I know that I can feel comfortable in lots of different environments. And
Yeah.
I think part of that also might be because we've talked about it a bit before, but you know, if I go to a country and people think I'm from there, or people will instantly have more of an affinity with you because they kind of they want to sort of speak and engage. But the interesting thing about that is, yes, people might think I'm from that country, so that sparks a conversation, but they're even more interested when I'm not. So that tells you something sometimes, that you kind of are drawn in because someone thinks you're similar to them, but then they're even more drawn in when they
Yeah.
realize that, oh no, actually it's even more interesting. So that's something. But yeah, I definitely think that I'm very comfortable around difference in inverted
Yeah.
comma. I'm very comfortable around different people in different cultures, and I love learning languages. So not just 𝒂💏💈, but I'm a very big fan. If I could just spend all my time learning different languages, I think I would. So I do think that's a really big benefit. I think that sometimes, and this is a little bit controversial, so I'm saying this knowing that it can be a negative as well. But I think sometimes when people can't work out where you're from, they can't necessarily make
Mm.
certain assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think that can, I think, be helpful. And sometimes it's unhelpful, as we've spoken about earlier, but I think it means that perhaps people are slower to maybe ascribe certain things to you because they just don't know. You just come in and you're kind of different person. So I think those are definitely benefits. I do think I relate good to lots of different people, and I think in this world you need that. What was your second question? I forgot.
No. It was just a consideration about this.
Mm,
Surely you said it all. It was the challenges and
yeah.
what are the benefits and the challenges of being biracial. But you have illustrated it in a very nice way, and we can add what you said even before, even adaptability. It's a very nice point, no? And
Yes.
languages, you're talking about languages, you have to put in your search at Italian now because it will be.
I know. I do need to add in Italian, especially to read your good magazine as well. I can read it perfectly then.
Oh, but you said you speak Spanish. Spanish and Italian are
Civilian, I
similar,
can do it.
so.
It's true. It's true. I'm okay with it. Yeah, but it would be brilliant. It would be brilliant to speak Italian as well.
So, Sophie, being half, no, and negotiating racial identity in social interactions. Um, Usually, I hate when people try to tell me what I am or what I
Yep.
have to be. Okay. I would like to know your opinion on the fact that defining when we usually define ourselves and being fractional, doesn't this deprive us to claim fully our identity according to you? Don't you think we have the right to engage in a way that is comfortable for us with our culture as much as anyone else, even when it means including two or more cultures?
I completely agree. It's one of my frustrations is saying half as well. So I try not to say it because there was a while ago a hashtag that went round saying I'm both, not half. And I really like this hashtag because I feel like this, and it slightly goes back to what I was saying earlier when people, I think I got this comment once, you're trying too hard to be Indian. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I used to think, okay, so you want me to speak, or you think it's good because you see the opposite happens. I know people that are of Indian heritage, but they, for whatever reason, don't know the language and they get told off because they don't know the language, right? So it's like, okay, so you want us to learn the language, but you don't want me to learn it so well, and particularly not maybe as good as you do. Okay. So I want to speak broken, broken Hindi Gujarati. Okay, that's one thing. And you want me to know a bit about the culture, but you don't want me to know so much that it makes you uncomfortable because perhaps you didn't know something. And this is what I'm sensing. This is what I get. And I find it incredible because I think mixed people in particular, we are policed so much by, oh my God, she did this, but this is very Indian. And then if I do something that's quote unquote culturally not very Indian, that's because she's only half, that's because she's only half. No, it's because I'm a person first. And like I say, we all to a degree mix and match. Whether we're monoracial, biracial, triracial, we're all always mixing and matching because we've all got our own life purpose and life experience and life journey, and we take what we need and we do it. But yeah, I have found this to be incredibly frustrating. At the end of the day, and it goes back again to what is mixedness, what is our identity, and culture is open to all of us. We are all allowed to, I'm allowed to be part of my culture. been born into it. And I engage in other cultures in a respectful way, but I engage in other cultures too.
Yeah.
But we are so policed as mixed people. This, again, as I say, this trying hard to be Indian thing really, really, I just wanted to give up because I thought, what is it? What is it you want me to do? You want me to know certain things, but you don't want me to. You want me to do things, but you don't want me to,
Yeah.
I gave up a lot on that. I do what I want to do now. That comes with, I think, age and confidence. I show up how I want to show up. And that's that.
Yeah, it's like when I just bring for you an example that is what's used to I used to think about a lot about this, there are some words that we use to define ourselves that is not acceptable for some people, but it's acceptable for others because it's a matter of culture. For instance, I think about the word mulatto, uh,
Right.
mulatto for a British or an American, maybe can be an offensive word. But for instance, for Latinos, it's a normal way of expressing themselves. So sometimes there is this fight, people making gatekeepers, and they just tell you don't have to say that word because it's not tolerable, and so and so. Okay, but you have to considerate and put in a right contextualization
Yes.
their history, their culture. So
Absolutely.
if I'm used to hear and I like, let us say, the word mulatto, and for me it doesn't mean exactly, they will put it in an ignorance, step, saying that you don't know what is the meaning of the word. No, I mean, I know exactly the meaning of the word, but it's part of my history. It's part of my
Yes.
culture. So do you want to cancel it to make me what? To get another word that is, I don't belong to it, or what?
Yes.
So this,
Yes, and it denies history. I mean, I obviously I come from some of this with my own ignorance as well. But even I'd heard from other people, so in the UK, to call people coloured is now a very offensive thing. But I was speaking to someone who's from South Africa, and
of
she's
course.
saying, but if we don't say coloured, I can't give you a better descriptor
Thank you.
without, for want of a better word, whitewashing history. I don't know how to tell you that. So,
Yeah.
like you're saying, in different contexts. I mean, in the UK, I think if you're just talking about the UK, I can see how that's offensive there. But if you're talking about South Africa, and if you
Yeah.
know anything about the apartheid, you'll know why this became such an important thing, and why people talk about the experience of coloured people. You can't talk about the apartheid experience without talking about that. And
Exactly.
this is people's own roots and history. So I completely agree with you that this gatekeeping, I think, actually, instead of over counseling and instead of policing things, what we really need to be focusing on is how are we explaining things to people, and what's the intent behind it, and then we can actually understand things. Otherwise, our conversation is going on about words and this, not the experiences behind those
Yeah,
words.
yeah, and it especially have to be a mutual respect, has to
Mm,
go to upon two ways. If you don't have to force me to define myself in a different way, I want to be defined. If I like
yes.
mulatto, okay. You don't like it, I won't define you mulatto. But if
Right.
I like it, you can
I
define.
like it.
It's a mutual respect, but sometimes it
Yes.
becomes a war.
Yes. It's the wrong thing as well. Like, this is a distraction. For me, it's like this.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a distraction. And like you say, I mean, we have to sort of get to know each other. And as you say, if that's something that is difficult for you, and you don't want that word, then I won't call you that word.
Yeah.
But if you're using it for yourself, then how is it that I'm going to tell you, no, you can't use a word that you would use for yourself that you're happy
Exactly,
with?
exactly,
You
exactly.
wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense.
Ah, that's nice. Sophia, what do you think about color blindness? Do you think it's an obstacle to racial justice?
I do, because I think that even if it comes with a good intent, it actually creates more problems than it solves, in my view. I'm always struck by the thing that I don't want, it, and I suppose it depends what aspect of my identity you're talking about, but if you're proud, especially where you're proud of where you come from, and all of us have the right to be proud of our roots. I don't want you not to see where I come from. I don't want you to be colorblind, because if you're colorblind, you're not seeing the person, you're not seeing their heritage and their roots. And to me, that speaks of trying to make everybody the same, and we're not. Um, and it also speaks to ignoring really vital aspects of people's identity. People don't want to be ignored for their identity. They just don't want to be treated in an unfavorable way because of their race or heritage or religion, whatever. So I have an issue. I think, again, it's the wrong thing to be looking at. I don't think we should be saying the way that we achieve racial justice is to sort of ignore where, you know, people's color of their skin, or to ignore their heritage. It's because we're ignorant of each other's heritage, and it's because we put fears and barriers. That's where we're getting more separate. That's where we're creating more division. So that's my issue with the color blindness perspective. Even though I can understand that in some ways it's trying to come from sometimes a good place.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think it's something we have to walk to, because people um, really don't understand the importance of being seen, of being represented, and it's something we have to continue to shout, let me say, because we have
Yeah.
to be seen. We have to be
Yes.
really seen. So, Sophie, just my last
Mm.
question, and I will
Mm.
just
Gone fast. It's gone
leave
very
you to
well.
your day, beautiful day.
Great.
We're on a closing time. But you know, you are very young. I know that. Yeah.
I think it's debatable, but yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it
Yeah,
today.
yeah, you're really young. I would like you to give a message, okay,
Mm.
to the new mixed generation. Um,
Mm.
what would you like to wish them, and what would you like them, how would you like them to design the new world coming on?
Yeah, such a great one to end on. I mean, the first thing I say is be proud. Everyone, as I say, has the right to be proud of where they come from. Be proud. Um, I always think that other people's negative reactions to you are just projections of themselves. It's got nothing to do. So try as much as possible to keep that in mind. Walk with your head held high. And the other thing I would say is that, you know, don't get caught in the trap of creating more divisions. I think there's always manners in which people are going to create divisions, and I think as mixed people, I think we automatically think, oh, we're not very divisive, but I think we have to be aware of factors in which we can also be divisive, and we should also be aware of some of our own prejudices as well. And I think that if you can do that, you know, I think we are important. You know, you're an important generation, because I think what I've noticed from the people that I know of this generation is that they're not going to take a lot of the things that people previously have taken. And I think that's a really good thing to do. I think it is to be strong, but it's also to be aware of our own subconscious and prejudices that we might bring, because that strength that we have to combat prejudice, we've also just got to combat our own as well. So that's kind of that's kind of what I say. But yeah, be proud and you know, just keep checking in on your own prejudices
Yeah.
and don't fall for any division and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very nice. I agree with you, and I just subscribe exactly all your words. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
No, this is
Sophie,
great. Thank you.
yeah, I really thank you for sharing your precious time, really, and your thoughts with us today. I would say that as people of mixed heritage, we're, let us say, the embodiment of the wonderful diversity within our communities and society. And each of us is unique with a
Mhm.
beautiful blend of different colors,
Yeah,
cultures, religions, beliefs, and perspectives all coming together. So I
agree.
hope today our conversation will help mixed heritage families to face the many barriers they are facing, and maybe help also the people who struggle with their identity, because there are really a lot of people, mixed people, struggling with their identities for many reasons, and they experience harsh prejudice and hate.
Yeah.
So we know deeply how hard is it finding our way in the world if we don't fit into a specific box or label. But despite these challenges, it's possible to thrive positively, right? Do you agree with?
Absolutely. And you know, create your own box. And actually sometimes when you create your own box, when you create your own kind of things, guess what, people come to you. So this has
Yeah,
always been one thing. I've been an outlier even in my job, even in lots of different environments. I'm often
yeah,
the outlier, but what I can tell you, and sometimes it's lonely, but what's really interesting is that you actually attract more people because you're you,
yeah,
and because nobody's like you. And I think for mixed heritage people in particular,
yeah,
that's absolutely the case. You know, I always say you're a minority, sometimes within a minority. Um, but I think that in some odd way, in a paradox way, it also means that you draw more people to you. So create your own box, create your own table, your own stand,
yeah,
and actually
yeah.
you'll bring people to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I thank everybody again for being with us today.
Right?
Just wait for me on the lounge 1 minute, so I greet you definitively. And I greet all our friends for now. Best wishes, everybody, and a very great well done to all of you. Bye.
Bye bye.